Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Rackham, and this is my presentation of my research project for the Cybersecurity Capstone class at Columbia College. I will be discussing managing cybersecurity risks in a business-to-business, or otherwise known as B2B relationships. The professor overseeing my project is Dr. Howard Goodman. The points that I will be presenting to you today are in direct relation to the proposal of the aforementioned subject. We will begin with an introduction of B2B relationships and their inherent cybersecurity associations, and then follow on by highlighting the risks associated for any given B2B relationship. Next, I will discuss the peer-reviewed literature I utilized during my research on this subject, subsequently followed by the general research design that I employed and my overall conclusions. As we all know, there are inherent risks in any B2B relationship. In our current world, this is only irritated by the added supports of a digital construct and its medium in which we interact with every day. However, within such relationships, any supply chain will only be as strong as its weakest link. Therefore, through the analysis of various information repositories currently available, I have determined that there are some simplistic steps that an organization can implement to harden its assets from most risks associated when engaging with the necessary supply chains. Improved collaborations are predominantly produced with e-commerce relationships. However, there is an abundant level of cybersecurity risk that is a natural byproduct of these relationships. Two of my referenced researchers, Kumar and Van Dysel, summarize these risks as being the associated cost of exposure due to the possibility of a partner being exploited in any given relationship. When a vendor's network and systems are not properly secure, they pose an unacceptable risk to the relationship. Numerous automated operations occur in a just-in-time environment, and inasmuch, vendors are typically the weakest link in the supply chain for all the necessary materials and parts inventory. Subsequently, any failure to deliver parts or materials for a prolonged period directly affects the manufacturer, hence leading to extended shutdowns in a domino effect, which will then directly distress the supply and demand balances in the market. Other researchers that are referenced, such as Kaczynski and Sutton, proposed an assurance service model based on three levels of perceived B2B risk to find an equitable balance. These levels are noted as a technical level, application and user level, and finally a business level of managed risk. Currently, the technical level role of managed risk addresses whether any minimal B2B elements are in place and if they have any realistic financial and technological resources available that are integrated with any external or internal applications. The application and user level role of managed risk relates to ensuring that decision makers' choices and rationale for B2B employment are suitable given any of the assumed risks. Any risk in this area is controlled by understanding the potential benefits of B2B linkages, assessing the current business environment and internal processes, obtaining information about B2B options, assessing organizational readiness for adopting B2B, relying on paper-based transactions for internal processes, dealing with the impersonal nature of e-commerce transactions, and finally assessing the reliability of internal transaction processing. The business level role of managed risk relates to an organization's ability to suitably re-engineer outdated business processes to incorporate an e-commerce driven business. Through the readings of Hampton, Sutton, and Kaczynski, they allowed me to realize the overall discussion and the author's recognition of the need for efficient cybersecurity risk management processes within the span of an organization's supply chain. Additionally, they discuss the resource advantage theory of competition to provide a theoretical basis for measuring the dual drivers of relationship construction and cyber risk management for partnership self-assurance. It was Bocchio, Sendrick, and Bocchio's presentation of how they investigated the current status and perspective direction of implementing information systems in supply chain management that consist of multi-component production strategies that illustrate the vast uncertainties and risks confronted by cybersecurity. They postulate that to successfully incorporate business methods between suppliers and consumers, it will ultimately be the responsibility of manufacturers to solve the complex cybersecurity problems inherent to information security instead of the vendors. Shazad, Zong, and Gerby reviewed the implementation of techniques currently used to manage supply chain ecosystems. They asserted that using scaled mechanisms such as IoT-based supply chain systems, organizations will leverage the security scheme of the CIA triad in addition to any established digital signature scheme for potentially secured non-repudiation security services. Although Tufal, Parvez, and Batul and Stewart expand on how the world is evolving from the conventional grid to a smart grid. Accompanying this transition is the introduction of numerous sensors and data ports that are continuously sending and receiving data packets via a networked connection. This increasing volume can only result in an increase in vulnerabilities. However, any effective cyber attack can damage the CIA elements of a smart grid, resulting in production loss. Therefore, specific techniques have been suggested to minimize a cyber attack from any level of the CIA triad. Yet nothing is without an account as discussed by Cho, Taylor, and Brzezinski. They present consideration for the guidance of the three new Service Organization Control reports released by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, or ASIPA. Furthermore, this report is a breakout of the requirements and consequences of the SOC 2 reporting scheme, with a focus on recording the interested parties, any applicable criteria, and applications that may benefit from the SOC 2 survey framework. I completed a detailed review of the aforementioned materials to determine predefined and measurable levels of risk that are associated to working directly with vendors. The purpose of identifying and comparing these results was to illustrate any evidence that from collaborative efforts between manufacturers and suppliers would produce quantitative results and if it is manageable independently. As with any business, the main objective is to evolve and grow the business. Therefore, a dynamic relationship between supplier and manufacturer must change with the application of time. The resulting conclusion is that any B2B relationship, expected levels of security must be addressed and reviewed on a regular basis to prevent data breaches within the given supply chain. All of these peer-reviewed articles have a common thread: the idea that any exposure can create a vulnerability. It is incumbent upon any organization's C staff to determine what the nominal level of risk is for their organization, given its risk appetite. Additionally, when there are no options other than to utilize a vendor that might be classified as high risk, executive decisions must be weighed against the organization's stakeholders' best interests before moving forward with a contract, let alone how might the parent organization monitor the high-risk entity. Comparatively, it is in the best interest of the vendor to meet the required security assurance levels outlined by the producer. Otherwise, with an ever-expanding market, the inclusivity that was once belonged to a sole proprietor is no longer a viable option. But most importantly, all standards and guidelines for compliance are required to be outlined in a contract or service level agreement. Threat actors are ever present and only multiply with the integration of additional vectors, such as the IoT and added suppliers or vendors to any network. However, in any B2B relationship, what one company may consider as an acceptable risk may not meet the minimum standard for another. Therefore, each partner must complete a risk control analysis to be provided during the contract negotiations so that any area of concern can be addressed in a risk management plan prior to any cyber incident, breach, or ransomware attack. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Again, my name is Matthew Rackham, and this was my presentation on managing cybersecurity risks in business-to-business relationships. If you would like more information, please feel free to contact me via email or the LinkedIn link on your screen. Chapeau.